photos of someone holding a fish with the background blurred out.
Oh,
It's cringy.
the best is when there's lightning and stuff.
Welcome to the Deep Drop, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Luke McCredden and I'm with Adam Ring, as always. This is a fishing podcast. We're asking the questions, the how, when, why, and what's, and there's plenty of them. And we are going to do our best at tackling those questions, and we'll have a bit of fun along the way. We might as well get things kicked off. What weight defines a barrel tuna? Such a good one. Such a good one. History would suggest 100 kilos. I'm just going to put that out there straight away. That history would suggest 100 kilo, and we'll talk southern bluefin tuna specifically at the moment. I think that's been the most popular sort of species, particularly in the southern states in the last couple of years. But does that undersell the fish that are under 100 kilos? So I don't want to answer a question with a question, but I kind of think that, you know, there's a lot of fish that are getting caught that aren't getting called as barrels. It's probably not fair.
Yeah, but I think on the flip side, there's quite a few fish that are getting called barrels that clearly aren't. Now, I want to state straight off the bat, I'm not a tuna fisherman's backside. So take my opinion with a grain of salt, but it's a really clear answer from me.
Yeah.
It's 100 kilos.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not to undersell anything, because I know, like, I've seen that the 80s, some fish in the 80s claimed as barrels, and no, I'm not having it. It's 100.
Well, let's break it down, because for me, you know, there's a lot of, 5 to 10 kilo fish, particularly in around Bass Strait in the last couple of years, and they're kind of almost regarded as school tuna. Just people almost write them off as just little fish and whatever. They're great fun if you want them to be. But then there's that bracket of 10 to 30 kilo fish that I find are quite rare, and oddly enough, are kind of held in really high regard because of the rarity. Like, they don't come across fish around that 30 kilo mark too often. And by the way, 30 kilo southern bluefin tuna is a good fish.
It is a great fish.
But then there's the bracket of 30 to, say, 80, or, just sub 100, which is an amazing capture.
Yeah.
It's an incredible fish. It is a big fish.
And we don't see many. This is where Victoria is really interesting. We see quite a lot of fish in that 5 to 10, and then during certain parts of the season, that 20 kilo fish, especially of recent times, a lot of those fish out the front in Bass Strait have been around that 20, 22 kilos. But for whatever reason, between 30 and 80, you don't really... No. They just automatically become 100. Yeah. It's weird.
They grow from 30 to 100 in a couple of days. Yeah. But it's a fascinating one, because I think are people catching them in the 90s or 80s and being a bit disappointed? Because you can't be. It's an amazing capture. But if we're talking about barrels, I just think you can't really go past the fact that 100 kilos has been the benchmark for what defines a barrel tuna.
Yeah, and if someone heads out of Portland, say, and they get a big fish boat side, they're not interested in killing it, they cut it off and let it swim away and go, got a barrel? My automatic, it was over 100. Now, whether it was or it wasn't, I don't really care. Yeah. Because a jumbo sized tuna, but if you're going to put it on the scales, like, it's going to be hanging from a gantry back at the ramp, and it doesn't tick over 100, it's not a barrel.
No, I know. And then you've got the bit of shame.
Yeah, exactly.
The shame of unhooking it.
Yeah.
Going, oh, sorry,
so don't say barrel until you've either released it or it's hanging.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's fair. And I think from when we first started seeing 100 kilo fish, when I say first started, when it was becoming really sort of doable, I suppose, for recreational anglers, Portland was certainly a place where it was happening. Barrel was only 100 plus. Yeah. It wasn't even talk of anything under that. It was like, if it's not 100, don't even tell us.
Yeah.
Don't even talk to us about it.
And it's still a little bit like that.
But people shouldn't be put off if they're targeting a barrel of 100 kilos and don't quite get it. It's in the 90s. They can't be put off by that.
Nah.
Keep at it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it still needs to be regarded as an amazing capture.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely not trying to offend anyone that you know what I mean, is put up and it's 85 and they're like, oh, I got a barrel. Like,
You didn't.
you didn't. Good fish. Like, but
Amazing.
but you didn't.
Amazing, but you didn't. But do they need a different nickname? I mean, that's another question. I don't want to be throwing all these other questions out
keg.
there. But a keg. It makes sense. It makes so much sense.
So from what, 50 to, well, then in fact 50 to 100 would be a keg, because we can't say 50 to 80, because then what's between 80 and 100?
Exactly. You know, maybe some of this question stems from the fact that when you talk to people or your friends and you've just caught an 85 kilo bluefin tuna, like, what are you calling it?
Yeah.
Solid fish. I caught a solid fish on the way. You got to give it something. But
that's true.
I guess definition, you know, unofficial definition, if it's not 100.
It's not a barrel.
Damn.
I'd love to hear from especially people that have caught multiple big fish between that 80 to 100. What do they think? Because it's one thing for me to sit here and I'd be lucky if I've caught a tuna over 15 kilos, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, I think it would vary. I think if there's someone out there who's caught multiple 100+ kilo fish, then they would say has to be 100.
Surely.
If there's a few people, or if there's someone who's missed out,
stuck in the 80s,
they'd be going, nah, come on, give us a barrel at 80.
Not having it.
Oh, well, let's hear. Get in touch. Get online and let us know, because it's a good one. But I think we just have to stand firm at 100.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why hasn't micro jigging taken off in Victoria?
It's a great question. We've seen it take off in other parts of the country. It's huge in Western Australia. I wouldn't say anywhere else has probably grasped it as well as what they have. And it's a topic that I'm quite passionate about, because everything about it is cool. Now, Luke, you and I have been lucky enough to work in the industry, the fishing industry, for a long time. Everything about this topic is unreal. The gear is cool.
Yeah.
The jigs are cool.
Yeah.
Everything about it seems like it should catch fish. And you saw it firsthand in New Zealand. We've seen the stuff from WA. I don't know, people are mucking around with it in New South Wales, Queensland, doing really well. Yep. I don't know why it hasn't taken off here, and it's something that I've thought about in detail. Is it the fact that we're fishing, most of our fishing in Victoria takes place in a bay rather than offshore, so it's shallow water. There's not really a huge amount of structure, so it's hard to keep a jig in the strike zone.
Yep.
I don't. This is such a complex question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think personally that the biggest thing is about where you are in the ground you're fishing on. I just think jigging in general, micro or heavy, lends itself to fishing over structure and reef, right? Because a lot of the fish are targeting that. You know, you can set yourself up on a drift or whatever it may be over these reef structures and go nuts with jigs, micro or otherwise. You're right. I think the vast majority of Victorian anglers, if you did a tally, are fishing Western Port and Port Phillip Bay.
Yeah.
They're not really conducive to jigging over reef in either of those. I think ultimately that's what it comes down to, and I've thought about this a lot. I think if you're talking about snapper and kingfish in general, like focusing on those two for a while, because that's what we first saw in New Zealand. And I just think about where we are catching them in, I'm going to say New South Wales as well, right? It is on those reefy ground. Yeah, I know snapper in Port Phillip Bay, it is the thing to do, and they're kind of everywhere in the mud bowl that is Port Phillip Bay. But are they holding on anything? Usually, yes. It's a tiny bit of structure.
Yeah.
Right? It's almost impossible to set adrift and do more than one drops of a jig.
That's right.
And I just think it's not appealing to anyone to do that. But when you think about offshore, and you and I have done a bit of just mucking around offshore out in Bass Strait,
yep,
and over the bits of reef that we find, and lo and behold, you are able to set yourself up with more of a drift, and you are able to capture pinkies and other species that are around down there. Now shift that up to New South Wales, where you and I also, I'm not trying to make this about us, have done extensive sort of trips, whether it be middle of winter or spring, autumn. It is the absolutely perfect place on the south coast to jig for snapper and kingfish.
Yeah.
And that's just south coast. I mean, there's a whole heap of coast that's great for it up in New South Wales, but ultimately I think it's about where you're fishing and doing the micro jigging.
Do you think maybe we don't have as many desirable species to try and catch on jigs? I mean, you could go offshore on any given day and say, we would go out there to target snapper or kingfish or anything like that. But every second drop you're going to get a Sergeant Baker or a Gurnard.
Yeah.
There's not really that, let's just go and jig and see what's down there. Like we don't have the endless schools of nannies, or you got the jewfish over out west, or it's weird. I also think we haven't spent enough time exploring Bass Strait.
Yeah, well, that's true too. I think that's a very valid point. And I think this last couple of years, early into the 2020s, we've done more of it than ever because of the pelagics.
Yeah.
So I'd love to think that people, now that they've seen how capable they are and their boats are, that they can get out there and spend some time out there. Maybe we'll think, all right, well, it's not necessarily tuna time. Let's find another thing to do. And I still think jigging, micro jigging, is something that could be done out there with great success.
Yeah, and I still think there's a lot to be done within the bay itself too. I mean, Victoria is so traditional in the way it fishes for snapper. It's kind of ingrained in our DNA that you just load up on silver whiting and pilchards and sound up a school and anchor up. But I think for the people that have tried it, I think they have learnt too that it's probably not as easy as what it's not as easy as just dropping a jig to the bottom and then, waving your rod around a little bit and getting the jig to dance. There is technique to it, and I don't think we've spent enough time really dialing in on what the jigs are supposed to be doing, how we translate that, how we get that, because you kind of do need some specific type gear for it, especially because if we were in Port Phillip Bay, we'd be using very light jigs.
Yes.
20 gram, 30 gram, 40 gram. That, in the grand scheme of things, that's pretty light.
Yeah.
It could just be something we're late to the party with. And I also think too, with the introduction of things like spot lock and electric motor, like most boats now have got, electric motors with spot lock. I think we need to approach it differently in Victoria. Sound up a school, spot lock, drop the jigs, jig on them for 10 minutes, nothing's happening. Move to the other side of the school, spot lock, really stay active, because as you said before, Port Phillip Bay is practically a big mud puddle. Yeah. You can set up a long drift as long as you want. But the fact of the matter is you're going to spend majority of that drift on open mud.
Well, that's the thing. That majority of that drift isn't what would be considered a strike zone.
Yeah.
Whereas if it was all reef and structure, even if you're not necessarily sounding a fish right where you are, you're still in the zone because they can move in on those spots really quick.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think Port Phillip Bay is conducive to jigging. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love your enthusiasm, and I hope people do have a crack. I just don't think it's set up for that sort of fishing. And like people have done it, and they've caught fish.
Oh, for sure they have. Yeah.
But I think it's more about that structure you're fishing. I think. Again, let us know. Maybe this is something that we're missing.
I was going to say we just completely overlooked.
So give us some ideas. Give us where have you been jigging, micro jigging in Victoria? What have you been catching? Where should we go?
Yeah, because I want a piece of it.
We love it. We love it. It's great. It's great. And I think there is a future for it.
Yeah,
but a bit of effort.
You can a Welsh pool.
Yeah, why not?
The popularity of Welsh pool in that area has exploded massively in the last few years.
Do you think that brings in a new or an extra element of challenge in tide and flow, and all of a sudden, like I know there's tide and flow offshore and in the bays, but all of a sudden now you're talking about probably needing some serious weight.
And deep water there as well. Yeah. But I think that it's a technique thing. I think that's just working out how to control the boat, how to control the jig, because you can control them.
So to summarise this and say why hasn't micro jigging taken off in Victoria, are we saying effort?
Yeah.
I think we are. Get out there.
I don't know, because there is some people that have done quite a bit of it, and you wouldn't say it's been any more successful than
Well, I guess
Anything else?
looking at the question, it hasn't taken off.
No.
So that's what is in that question, and it hasn't taken off.
No, it hasn't.
Yeah.
It's nowhere near it.
Here's another way to look at it too. A lot of fishing is determined by the fashion of the tackle industry.
Yeah.
The small jig market went nuts for a while. It's died off.
Yeah.
A lot of suppliers are not doing that stuff anymore.
Which means no one caught fish on them.
But it also means no one's really going to buy that stuff because it's not available.
It's not available.
So, yeah. I mean, there still is. There's still options available. Plenty of, stuff you can do. But, yeah, I think the tackle industry kind of faded as well.
There's a question to our listeners. Why won't you try it? Or why aren't you actively doing it?
Yeah. Good.
It could just be down to an understanding of the gear.
Yeah. Wow. It's effort. It's understanding. It's the mud bowl.
I think I've talked myself out of trying it.
I'm getting back in. Is it okay to be cagey and post heaps of fishing pics at the same time? Well, let's start by defining cagey, all right? Just for the listeners out there who might not be across this language. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ads, you throw this word out a lot when you see people on social media. Cagey is someone who's basically not prepared to share information.
Yeah, but is happy to gain as much information as humanly possible.
So let's just start there, all right? So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about people who are promoting what they're doing yet hiding what they're doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So is it okay? Well, I mean...
There's heaps of layers to this. There's heaps of layers.
There's so many layers. I don't even know where to start. Look, this is my opinion.
All right, well,
if this triggers someone, this is not what we're here for. We're here for breaking down these and having
open-ended discussion.
Yeah, so listeners, tell us as well, because we're just going to say what we think. I don't think you can be both. I think you got to just draw a line at some point. Stay in your lane if you're cagey, or get it out there and share the love.
Yeah.
I'm not saying. I'll preface all of this by saying no one expects anyone to give a GPS mark, time, day,
well, some people.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, don't be one of these people that are cagey, exactly like this question says, but also wants credit for stuff and wants a bit of a pat on the back.
Because whether you like it or not, as soon as you put it out there in social media world, you invite those questions.
Well, you're saying, check it out, check me out, ask me whatever you want, and then when you do ask, they go, "No, I'm not telling you anything."
Because I guess I do to an extent understand the cagey mindset. I wouldn't say I've got it.
Like, no. I totally understand.
I'm happy to discuss with anyone where, how, when, and why I got fish. But I must admit, though, I'm not one of these anglers that puts excessive amounts of time into working out one specific area or one specific technique. So I get it, and I do understand that some fish can be hard to find, but once you find them, can be really easy to catch. I get it.
Yeah. Oh, I want to clarify by saying I completely understand people that are cagey and don't want to share too much information, if any. I totally understand that, and I'm all for that if that's your thing.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, I don't think, in answer to the question, I don't think it is okay to be both. Then post
I totally
hero
agree.
pics.
I totally agree.
Yeah. And I'll add to it by saying that, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, so people don't, oh no, you can attack me if you want. The photos of someone, this is visceral, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, just in general. The photos of someone holding a fish with the background blurred out.
Oh.
It's cringy. It's so cringy. Oh, it makes me embarrassed for that person.
The best is when there's lightning and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. Don't post it.
Yeah.
Like if you don't want to. Or if you're really proud of your capture, which you should be, because that's fishing. If you catch anything, you should be proud of it. Send it to your friends in a private group chat.
That's probably the worst example of cagey. Like, you still feel compelled to put the photo up and show everyone, but you've clearly dropped it into paint beforehand and erased the background.
Oh, and it's such a bad it's such a bad job 90% of the time too.
Yeah,
it's I'll just smudge all the background. I don't know.
That's the word. Like
secondhand embarrassment.
Yeah,
when you're looking at that, you
sure.
go, "Oh my god, I'm so embarrassed for this person."
Yeah, for sure.
Don't post it
Yeah.
if you're that worried about it, but you still want to tell your mates. Tell your mates. Send it to them in a text.
Yeah.
Say, hey, don't tell anyone. If you're good enough mates, they'll say, nah, sweet, no worries. Which we get. We've got friends who do that. That's don't tell. But oh my God.
Plus, we've also got the benefit of technology these days.
Yeah.
You can take a photo and look at it instantly. If your mate takes a photo of your prize catch and there's a landmark in the back and you think reposition the boat and take another photo.
Turn around.
Like you can see it.
Like the ones you see where they're offshore and they've caught something sweet. Like kingfish, for example, is a bit of one of those species that and they blur out the background. If you just turn around, there's a horizon line with nothing on it for miles and
blue
miles.
water.
Oh dear. So look, I'm more than happy for people to be quiet with their information, be cagey, but but don't be both. Don't be then posting and trying to be.
I'm not saying if you're going to post, you have to give away everything, but you've got to play the game a little bit. And if you don't know how to play the game, don't post stuff.
Yeah. Wow. Well said. Prove us wrong.
Exactly. Again. Yeah. Tell me, and maybe it's because I haven't been bitten by not being cagey and going to fish somewhere and there's 5 billion anglers. It hasn't happened to me.
Yeah, but if it did though, would you then change your mindset and think, well, I'm not going to post about that next time?
Well, I guess the reason I haven't been is because catching them is never as easy as what it seems, and I still think there's quite a high percentage of people that would see your information, go there, luck out and not get them.
Yeah, that's true.
And never go back and do it.
And one thing I always say is, like, you've still got to be good enough to catch them. So even if you accidentally shared with me a GPS mark and I thought, oh, I've just got Adsy's great estuary perch mark, I've still got to go and actually be able to catch them. It's not, you're not, super giving away, critical information. But yeah, there's so many layers to it, as you said. But ultimately, in summary, no.
Oh, yeah, mate, I agree. If you want to be cagey, be cagey. But you know what I mean? We don't want to see what's been going on.
All right. That's a wrap. I hope you've enjoyed the deep drop. These are our thoughts only, so we're not claiming any of this factual. So we want to hear from you, and if you've got something that proves us wrong, let's bring it on.
Bring it on.
Bring it on. Thanks for listening, everyone. This is the Deep Drop. Don't forget to subscribe for free on wherever you find all your podcasts, and also jump on Instagram, search the Deep Drop, and give us your thoughts.